When Donald Trump was just the host of The Apprentice, did he have this steady stream of criminal investigations against him? We'll take your calls coming up and your text messages at 800-859-0957, 800-859-WJR, because it seems to me that, these New York DAs and lawmakers all loved him back then, or at least they wanted some of his, political contributions. Then he became a Republican president, and all that changed, as we know. So now, obviously, Trump is anticipating an indictment, Kevin, this week, maybe next week, by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, the far-left ideologue who's been after Trump for years, and now he believes he may have finally found a crime.
Yeah, Tom, officials in New York and Washington, D.C. are actually preparing for potential protests as this grand jury weighs possible charges in Donald Trump's alleged role in the scheme to pay hush money to adult film star Stormy Daniels in New York City. I guess I'm glad that law enforcement is getting ready. I don't know if the protests are going to come or not. I do think it would be really smart of Donald Trump to go on Truth Social or wherever he goes and say, look, this deserves protest, but I want them to be peaceful and make sure that you're heard, but that you do everything you can to avoid violence at all costs. I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but everyone's watching because it is so crucial. Let's bring in Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist, also a lawyer, and the host of the podcast Crisis Files. Good morning, Roshini. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Good to be with you today.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this yesterday, and people were pretty fired up. I don't know if things have simmered down at all. It doesn't look like charges are coming today, but it still seems like they might. When you look at this case overall, what is your impression of what the DA is doing here or may do?
Well, there are a couple of things. So the question of, is he going to be charged? That's really up to the grand jury and this DA. I mean, it can go in a lot of different directions. I think that DA needs to ask himself, what is worth charging? Are we charging out the crimes that are happening in New York that are really affecting people's safety and all these other things? Or are we spending a lot of time looking for things to charge Donald Trump? I mean, and again, I've come on your show many times. I'm not a huge fan of Donald Trump, but I am a fan of our justice system, and I am also a proponent of not wasting taxpayer money, and that's what some of this kind of comes down to. But the other piece of this, Tom and Kevin, is this whole, Trump pulling another page out of his playbook. There's no reason to arrest him. I mean, even if he gets charges, he's not going to jail tomorrow. I mean, that's the kind of diversionary tactic that I'm sort of disgusted with Donald Trump. That's just not how this particular situation would work out or play out if a charge were to come.
So let me ask you about the legal issues that people are talking about. They're talking about statute of limitations, and they're also talking about, do we charge people for this crime? People have non-disclosure agreements all the time. Is this like everybody's driving 5 miles over the speed limit and they picked out the red car, that this would be a crime if Donald Trump did this, and it's just not something they charge? Or is there actually a problem legally with even the charges?
Well, depending on what it's going to end up being called, so a misdemeanor or a felony, the actual just paying hush money, if that were even to rise to the level of some kind of charge, it would be a misdemeanor. Now, if he's using, or if he did use campaign finance money, if he was covering it up, if he was changing up his record keeping, that's when we get into felony territory. So what I would want to see if an indictment comes up is what is the actual charge and what are they claiming or what are they saying, accusing Donald Trump of doing. And that's how we look at the difference between felony and misdemeanor. But also, this kind of stuff happens. People cheat on their spouses all the time, sadly, and hush money is paid often, sadly, by people in higher positions when people in not as high positions or not as public figures are involved. So I think we need to ask ourselves, even if this gets charged out, is this the kind of crime we want our Justice Department, or I should say, in this case, New York's, but just our whole legal system getting into the nitty-gritty of and pulling out things from many, many years ago versus dealing with what's happening right now in America?
Yeah, the burden's really going to be on Alvin Bragg to prove that if he's going after this felony charge, that Donald Trump this was an actual political contribution because this benefited his campaign. When Donald Trump, if he even ever admits that he did this, would just say, no, I was just trying to keep it away from my wife. And Jonathan Edwards had the same, criminal defense, and he was let go on this. So that's a really hard thing for Alvin Bragg to prove, that this was a political contribution by maybe Michael Cohen or Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tom. And that's the piece of this that's difficult, is that evidence that this was actually not just politically charged, but let's just go to what the charge would be, which would be some sort of false records, some sort of anti-election money kind of law. That's what we'd have to be looking at to even move this into the realm of felony. So you've got the actual legal chain of events, but then you have the whole, optics and that media arena, and that is where Donald Trump usually plays well. But I'm a little disgusted with a lot of the media on this. Sometimes just turning your back on the crazy allegations is the way to go with Donald Trump. Like the whole, I'm going to go to jail, or I don't care if I get charged, I'm still running. I think that's the last time I was on with you guys. I mean, we have to really kind of call out Donald Trump for what he's doing. And first and foremost, the Republican Party needs to do that, right? If he's going to be their candidate in 2024 or a possible candidate, it would be interesting if we could actually see the Republican Party step up and try to control some of these narratives that Donald Trump puts out there and whips everybody into a frenzy.
Yeah, do you believe that, people watching this in the media, the American people, do they view this case is really out of the ordinary? Do they understand that non-disclosures happen on a pretty regular and consistent basis, politically and in the corporate world as well? Or are they believing some of the media narrative out there that this is very unique and, this is a high crime type of narrative?
That's a great question. I don't know that the regular public is really looking at the legal angles, the legal reality of this. I think they're just, maybe it's the narratives from the media that are making them jump to the politics of this. This is by no means a high crime or misdemeanor. And then you've got the other layer of this, Tom and Kevin, which is it a good idea for the American justice system to charge a former president with an actual crime that really doesn't have anything to do with his office? So those are some philosophical questions, but some very precedential questions, because you do it now, it's going to stick forever, and it really opens up a whole can of worms.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump would be the first president to be charged after serving time in the White House. And you have to, it's just fun to try and figure out the politics of this. Is this going to help Donald Trump? Is it going to help Republicans? Is it going to hurt Democrats, or is it going to help the Democrats? It's just going to be really, really fun to watch. We appreciate you coming on, Roshini.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist, attorney, and host of the Crisis Files podcast.